As 2026 gets underway, there are some big legal stories to watch, from high-profile court battles to decisions that could affect everyday Coloradans. 9 News legal expert Whitney Traylor is here to break down 9 cases that could have a major impact this year. Thanks for coming in.
Sure, good to be here.
All right, let's count down backwards.
Okay.
Number 9 is an issue that has received national attention, transgender athletes, and you have a couple cases you're going to discuss.
Yeah, this has been a major issue, is transgender athletes competing, and particularly transgender women competing in women's and girls sports. And so there were 2 cases. One was in Boise State and one was in West Virginia, dealing with a high school student. And really the laws prohibited transgender women and girls from participating in women's sports teams. And the lower courts ruled actually in favor of both women. In the Boise State, they said, hey, these laws violate the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause, and with respect to the high school student, they said this violates Title IX, which Title IX prohibits sex discrimination in education programs. So the Supreme Court has accepted both those cases. We're going to see this year, there's going to be a ruling on that. I suspect it's probably going to be on ideological lines, and the court will probably uphold those bans, but we'll see. The lower courts did not.
Yeah, that is a big one to watch out for. All right, number 8 deals with firearms. What is the Supreme Court deciding in this case?
Yeah, this is really interesting. This is based on a Hawaii law that prohibits firearms, even if you have a concealed carry, from being used on private property unless you have explicit permission from the owner. And so in Hawaii, they have a new law where they have a list of sensitive places where firearms are banned. And it's about 15 different places, like bars and beaches, banks, right, those types of things. And so the question is it a crime to carry a handgun on private property without the property owner's explicit permission? And the plaintiffs are arguing, hey, the Second Amendment doesn't apply to private property. And the Ninth Circuit, the lower court, upheld that law. So we're going to see again if the Supreme Court then expands that law, and they most likely will, based on previous gun cases before the Supreme Court.
All right, coming in at number 7, a series of criminal cases that you're watching out for in 2026.
Right, so there's a number of criminal cases. The first one is the Luigi Mangione case, right? That's expected to go to trial in 2026. We also expect Nick Reiner, who's accused of murdering his parents. That obviously is a high-profile case. Another one related to Colorado was the John Halford. He was right from the Return to Nature funeral home, and they had almost 200 bodies that they were accused of improper disposal of corpses. And so that reason that case was interesting was that the plea deals were rejected by the judge because the families complained and said, look, this isn't enough time. But just a week or 2 ago, the court did accept the most recent plea deals. So John is expected to get 30 to 50 years. He's going to be sentenced in February, and his wife, Carrie, is expected to get 25 to 35 years. She's going to be sentenced in April. And that was the abuse of corpses of nearly 200 bodies. And of course, we saw over the last couple of years, as it relates to these funeral homes, just complete abuse of bodies and mishandling of bodies. And so our state legislature then made a number of new laws that are more regulatory of that industry.
And that's state, because they're also facing federal time as well, right?
Yes, that's correct. Okay. And then there'll be civil claims as well, I suspect, but I don't know if they have any money. And then finally, the Alex Murdaugh case, that also he was the lawyer in South Carolina who was convicted of murdering his wife and son.
Right.
Well, he has a pending appeal, and the appeal is based on the court clerk in that case who pled guilty to obstruction of justice, perjury, and other misconduct in connection with his trial. So the question is, will he get a new trial? Now, I watched that case, and there was a plethora of evidence. I would be shocked if he got a not guilty verdict if he got a new trial. But remember, on these trials, it has to be unanimous. So you get one person holding out, you could have a hung jury. So he's still kicking and fighting, even though he got those multiple life sentences.
Was that number 6?
That was number 7.
Okay, and number 6, you also have a Colorado case that's being heard in the Supreme Court, right?
Right, and this is the one, the Childs versus Salazar case, which is a challenge on Colorado's ban on conversion therapy. So conversion therapy is therapy to convert someone's sexual orientation or their gender identity. And the plaintiff in that case is a Christian, and she's saying that, and this is a quote from the case, clients can accept the bodies that God has given them and find peace. And she's saying that this law violates her free speech and her right to practice religion, because she's saying, hey, I'm using God to help these people to get back to their original whatever sexual orientation, that heterosexual, and the gender identity that they were born with. Now, the federal appeals court upheld this law, this ban on conversion therapy, and they said because it's not a restriction on free speech, but that they're regulating the healthcare profession. So it's really, it's an interesting issue, because the question is, well, is this related to the healthcare industry and their norms, or is this actually speech when you're acting as a therapist for these folks?
A lot of big cases to watch out for.
Yes,
and you just went through 9 through 6. We've got a few more to go through coming up in the next hour, going down all the way to number 1. Yesterday, you tricked us. We could not guess what it is. I'm not even going to try today.
Oh,
so
okay.
Looking forward to it. And in 1 hour, we're going to have the rest of those cases.
So our 9 News legal expert, Whitney Traylor, is here to continue breaking down the 9 cases that could have a major impact this year. Good morning, Whitney.
Yeah, good morning. Good to see you both back at the desk.
Yeah.
It's been a while. You left us for a long time.
I'm back.
Oh, we've missed you. Okay, well, let's pick back up with case number 5.
Oh, yes, case number 5. Okay, that was
quick reunion.
Let me get there. Louisiana versus Calais. This is actually really interesting because the court has eviscerated the Voting Rights Act, and now we're looking at Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And this case originated in 2022 when a group of black voters in Louisiana, they only had one congressional district out of 6 that was majority black, despite the state being 33% black. So they sued and won. Well, then just recently, a group of non-black voters sued saying, hey, this violates the Voting Rights Act. And now they're going to trial to determine whether this new map that has 2 black congressional districts is a violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And so what's interesting is the court heard argument in March, issued an order in June saying it was unable to resolve it, so they're pushing it forward. I haven't seen that before, so they're pushing it forward to this term. So there will be a decision on that. And that will affect, as redrawing congressional districts has been a major issue throughout the country in many states. So this will be very significant.
Okay. Case number 4 is a Colorado state case that you expect to go to trial this next year.
Yes, this one, and actually this is dealing with book bans. And the reason that we chose this one is because book bans has now become a major issue as well, where people who disagree with political ideologies are now, school boards are removing books and people are suing. So we had the lawsuit with the Elizabeth School District, which removed 19 books from their libraries in 2024. The court ordered them to push them back in. Litigation has been ongoing. There's currently an appeal pending in that. So I suspect that even after that appeal, that case is going to continue forward and we'll have the lawsuit next year. And also the former middle school dean is also suing. That's a separate lawsuit. That's supposed to go in 2026 because she's saying she was fired because she was objecting to that book ban, so to the removal of those books.
Okay.
So we'll see probably both of those cases in 2026.
Okay, and then how about case number 23 or number 3?
Number 3, yes. Okay, that is the RNC versus Wetzel case, and this is out of Mississippi. And the question is, when is a vote a vote? In Mississippi, they allow absentee ballots to be received up to 5 days after Election Day. And as we know, in the last couple elections, mail-in ballots have become completely political and partisan. And so now the question is, hey, do you have to, does your ballot have to be received by Election Day or postmarked by Election Day? So the court's going to rule on that, and obviously that'll have major implications, especially here in Colorado, because we have a very robust a very good mail-in system.
A lot of people primarily do it through mail-in.
That's exactly right. So whether that it has to be received by Election Day or postmarked by Election Day is going to be significant. It'll affect a lot of votes.
Yeah. Case number 2 is an important constitutional issue. Tell us about that one.
Yes, this is Birthright citizenship, the Trump versus Barber case. And this is, we know that there was an issue related to the nationwide injunctions. That was dealing more with the procedural issues. Now we actually have a case that's going forward dealing with the merits, and that is under the 14th Amendment, you're entitled to birthright citizenship. So regardless of your citizenship status, if you have a child on soil here, they're deemed to be a citizen. Obviously, President Trump signed this executive order trying to override that. And so now the Supreme Court is going to look at that and decide, hey, can this executive order override the Constitution? But what's really interesting is birthright citizenship was intended to repeal the 1857 Dred Scott decision that said black people, free or enslaved, were not U.S. citizens, but a separate class of people. So that's why then we came up with this birthright citizenship in the Constitution to really address that. So this has really important historical and cultural context.
Well, these were a lot of big cases, so I'm really curious what number 1 is and why it got the top spot.
Yeah, it's a great question. So number 1 was the Slaughter v. Trump case, and this is the one deciding, does the president have the right to terminate the heads of independent federal agencies? And why this is important is because administrative agencies are fundamental to our society and to our government. You know, the FCC, the FAA, in this case, it was the FTC. These are administrative agencies, and some people say it's become the 4th branch of government because we have so many administrative agencies, and they're very critical of that. But they play a very important role in the functioning of our government. And we have 2 types of agencies, independent and executive agencies. The independent agencies are really independent of the president's influence. And that's the question here. Can the president terminate the heads of these independent agencies for policy disagreements? Because the law says they can only be terminated for inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office. And what he did was he terminated some of the heads of the FTC because they were Democrats. And so the reason this got the top spot is because we've seen this administration, love it or hate it, do this complete consolidation of power in the executive branch. We're supposed to have 3 co-equal branches of government, the legislative, executive, and judicial. But what we've seen in this last year is the executive branch getting more and more power, and he's using it through emergency declarations and other ways. So now if the court says, yes, he has the right to terminate these heads of these agencies for just policy disagreements, that's going to be further consolidation of power in the executive branch.
No shortage of topics for you this year. We're going to keep you busy. You can't leave us for 9 weeks again. So I'm glad that you're back.
Yeah, but I got 9.
Who was counting, right?
Yes,
we were,
clearly. It was a long time.
Whitney, thank you so much.